First stage, overthinking. This is John. Every night he promises himself he'll work on his online business. Every night he ends up on the couch. Netflix is on, guilt is louder. He's watching TV, but his mind won't shut off. It replays plans, excuses, and tomorrow's promises. He's not resting, he's not working. He's stuck in the middle, overthinking while time quietly passes. Brain power is wasted and zero progress is made. Second stage, doing only when you feel like it. Sometimes everything aligns. John has energy, motivation, and mental clarity, so he works. Back in college, he would wait for these moments, watch TV, conserve energy, wait for his brain to turn on and his neurons to fire up. Then it happens. Focus kicks in. He studies, he trains, he feels good. But this isn't discipline, it's dependence on mood. This is John at his weakest mentally. Standards are low, control is limited. Still, it's better than overthinking because at least some work gets done. 2 or 3 moments like this a day build small momentum, but not enough to change his life. Stage 2 is about progress powered by feeling, not decision. Third stage, designing your environment. John knows willpower is weak, but environment is strong. Any addiction or distraction becomes manageable when the environment makes it almost impossible to act. Imagine John on a deserted island. No alcohol, no cigarettes, no junk food. Every day is survival. Temptation doesn't exist. The only food is fish, and only if he earns it. Discipline becomes unnecessary when choice is removed. Ancient wisdom shows the same. Odysseus tied himself to the mast so he could hear the sirens without acting. He didn't rely on strength, he removed the option. Modern life is the opposite. Alcohol, screens, gambling, cheap dopamine on every corner. John recreates the principle at home. He removes the TV, he locks his phone's screen time and gives the password to someone he trusts so he can't cheat. If no one can be trusted, he uses 1sec, not affiliated, which blocks apps for a set time. He meal preps, so when the time comes to eat, the decision is already made. He keeps gym equipment at home, dumbbells, an indoor bike if he can afford it, or even just a jump rope, so exercise becomes the easy choice. He surrounds himself with people who support that lifestyle, not people he succeeds despite, but because of. Stage 3 is about making good decisions easy and bad decisions almost impossible. Fourth stage, boosting your energy. John knows that feeling good fuels discipline. The more energy he has, the higher the probability he will follow through. In college, he learned that high-quality sleep is non-negotiable for focus. He also discovered that overeating leaves him sluggish, especially meals with big carb spikes. Funny enough, whenever he studied, he could never have a proper meal. He had to find balance between nutrition and mental clarity. Exercise, morning sun, and even small supplements boost his energy further. Each step compounds. Better sleep, better nutrition, regular exercise, and natural light create a foundation for having more energy. Stage 4 is simple but crucial. Energy fuels discipline, and without it, everything is much harder. If you design your habits or life against your biology, you are setting yourself up for failure. Fifth stage, calculated, effortless growth and neuron building. John understands that real change doesn't come from intensity, but from momentum. He runs a simple experiment, 5 push-ups a day, adding 2 every week. By the end of the year, he's doing over 100 without ever forcing himself. The rule is simple, never fall mentally. Because when people rely on control and then break, the collapse is never small. One drink turns into the whole bottle. One slip cascades into smoking, overeating, gaming, total loss of regulation. Momentum dies, and days or weeks are lost just to recover emotionally. John realizes he isn't just building habits, he's rewiring his brain and his identity. For that, he needs wins, many of them, days he can clearly mark as victories. That's why failure must be avoided at all costs, and goals must be made embarrassingly easy. At some point, John looks at himself honestly, not emotionally, objectively. If he has started the same change 30 times and failed every time, The problem isn't missing wisdom, it's missing strength, mental and physical capacity. He isn't lazy, he's simply not strong enough for the load he keeps taking on. The mistake was comparing himself to outliers, people operating at level 100 while he's currently at level 3. That comparison creates frustration, not progress. Real growth begins when John accepts where he actually is and designs baby steps he can win every single day. So instead of radical change, John becomes strategic. He sees his future clearly, waking up at 6 a.m., working on his online business before work, training 5 times a week. He reverse engineers everything. He normally wakes up at 8, so he starts waking up 3 minutes earlier each day. In 40 days, he's up at 6 without resistance. He wants 90 minutes of focused work, so he starts with 20 minutes and adds 5 per week. In 3.5 months, the habit is automatic. Only then does he add the gym. At first, the goal isn't training, it's showing up. 5 minutes is enough. Each week, he adds 10. In 6 weeks, he's doing full sessions. And for every 2 months, he increases to 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions per week. In about a year, the life he imagined is real. It looks stupid, but if someone offered a pill that guaranteed this outcome in 14 months, everyone would take it. The biggest mistake is taking on more than you can carry, falling, losing momentum, and repeating the cycle again and again. John sets a rule: only take on what has a 100% success rate, then slowly increase the difficulty. This approach is for people who failed many times, and there is no shame in that. Strength is built, not assumed, and once that strength exists, everything becomes easier. Also, a lot of this is biological. Compare your inner state when you're doom scrolling for 2 hours and compare it with the times you had your mind in order, working, going to the gym, eating clean. It is just a state of the mind, and by gradually creating habits, you are getting yourself to that state of mind. Sixth stage, momentum control. 2 months in, John finally has a streak. The habit is alive. Up to this point, he protected it from himself. Now comes the harder part, protecting it from the outside world. At this stage, momentum is everything. Lose it and the cost is far higher than missing a single action. John starts noticing the pattern. He quits refined sugar, then a coworker has a birthday. Cake appears, social pressure kicks in. One exception and suddenly cravings are back online. Or his bedtime is set to 10 p.m., but someone calls at 9:30. The call drags on, it's 11:30, sleep is ruined, and the next day collapses with it. Or he's at a bar with friends. Everyone is drinking except him. He knows drinking will hurt his sleep, drain his energy, and likely cancel tomorrow's workout. Or it's a work night, he needs to sleep early to work on his online business, but his girlfriend is over and mocks him for going to bed at 10. These situations are endless. This is the environment reacting to his change, and most of the time, the strongest force pushing against your goals is not internal, it's social. John learns that momentum must be defended aggressively. That doesn't mean never enjoying life. There will be weddings and other beautiful events. Flexibility matters. Missing one day is not failure, but missing 2 days in a row is dangerous. The rule is simple: never let a slip turn into a pattern. Always get back up the next day. John is also very cautious about vacations and getting sick, because in the past, these events kicked him off the rails. John starts asking himself some hard questions. All of these people, will they respect me and love me more with a six-pack or a beer belly? Will they respect me and love me more with six-figure income or as I am right now? Do I need to be always available? If I had other options, would I spend my time with these people doing these things? Momentum control is about boundaries, quiet ones. Success follows a recipe. The people who are willing to follow it, especially when it goes against social norms, are the ones who get the result. Seventh stage, parts work, winning the battle. At this stage, John understands that discipline is internal warfare. David Goggins describes it clearly. There are two parts inside you. One seeks comfort, pleasure, and relief. The other demands growth, order, and results. Every day they compete for control. Goggins treats the comfort-seeking part as an enemy that must be conquered, and this approach works. Strengthening the demanding side builds resilience and discipline, but taken too far, it breaks balance.
John learns a deeper truth. The comfort-seeking part isn't evil. It wants happiness, rest, enjoyment, and safety. Those are all valid needs. The problem isn't that this part exists, it's that it's allowed to rule. John needs to get his freedom back by strengthening the king part of his mind, which is also the prefrontal cortex. Every decision needs to be conscious, not impulsive, and not stemming from biological weakness and pressure. And then, when he gains his freedom, he can consciously decide if he wants to relax or to decide when it starts and when it ends. Discipline is not suppression, it's control. John fights to regain authority over his decisions. Let's be honest and look ourselves in the mirror. We don't have free will, not really. Without a strong prefrontal cortex, there is no free will, only reaction. A signal fires somewhere in the dark of your nervous system. Eat,
Scroll, consume, escape, and you move, not because you chose to, but because you were commanded. Most people live like this their entire life, mistaking obedience to impulse for choice, confusing movement with agency. Discipline is not moral virtue, it is the mechanism of freedom. As that part of you grows stronger, something changes. You begin to see clearly. The cookie is no longer comfort, it is an assault, a sharp spike that destabilizes the body, floods the blood, hijacks the brain, and demands more. Sugar stops looking like pleasure and starts looking like what it really is, a weapon against balance. This is why the inner voice of comfort cannot be allowed to rule. Left unchecked, it doesn't negotiate, it takes over. Freedom begins the moment you can pause, observe the impulse, and decide whether it deserves obedience. That pause is power. But you should not go into extremes. You cannot let it control you, and you cannot bury it in the dark either. You should honestly look yourself in the mirror and acknowledge your needs. I, John, have the need to feel joy, and sometimes it comes from food. I, John, sometimes have the need to just stay home, be comfortable, and watch Netflix. I, John, want to have fun with my friends, travel the world, and experience life. These needs are real, they are valid. A lot of self help today suggests suppressing and ignoring them, pretending they don't exist. John learned by observing himself that this was a major reason why he failed in previous attempts. He tried to live almost like a monk, disregarding all his other needs. It festered inside him. One impulsive evening, he collapsed. Now he sees clearly. All these impulses, the cookie, alcohol, Netflix, they are attempts at emotional regulation. That's why the comfort-seeking part cannot be ignored, suppressed, or left in the dark. Left unconscious, it grows, taking control through addiction and compulsion. But acknowledged, observed, and integrated, it loses its power. John can meet his needs consciously, on his terms, without surrendering freedom. In short, first regain your free will and freedom by strengthening the king part and the prefrontal cortex, and only then you can consciously acknowledge your needs without them controlling you and live a life you truly enjoy. Eighth stage, knowing yourself. At this stage, John understands that discipline without self-knowledge is blind. Not just the king and the comfort seeker, but all his parts. He becomes extremely objective and brutally truthful with himself, without judgment. He learns what fuels him, what drains him, where he's strong, and exactly where he's vulnerable. Every hardship is observed, not dramatized. Every failure becomes data. When he slips, he journals why, not to punish himself, but to see the pattern. Progress accelerates the moment honesty replaces self-deception. Ninth stage, using emotions to push through hardship. John knows what makes him weak, but he also knows what cuts deep. He makes value-based decisions. He's clear on the 3 to 5 things that matter most to him. His one big life-changing goal, his independence, the man he refuses to die without becoming. These values guide how he lives and how he decides. When the structure is in place and the habit is protected, emotions become a weapon. In moments of real resistance, he deliberately brings these values to the front of his mind and makes them emotional. Not to feel good, to move forward. He reminds himself what's at stake. This is where most people fail.
They try to live off emotion alone. They burn hot, then burn out. John doesn't. He builds cold, mechanical discipline first. Then, when things get brutal, he allows emotion to give him a final surge, a controlled boost, not the engine. Remember, emotion is a boost, not the base. 10th stage. It isn't about your feelings. The point of this stage is simple. Execution must be independent of mood. Most people still operate on feelings. When they feel like doing something, they act. When they don't, they stop. That is not discipline. That is emotional obedience. John reaches a level where action is no longer negotiated with his inner state. He knows what matters, he has decided, and execution follows regardless of how he feels. He expects resistance. He expects discomfort. He expects it to be unpleasant. None of that is a signal to stop. Boys believe. Men are certain. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions. He allows them fully, frustration, doubt, heaviness, but they no longer influence behavior. Feelings are information, not commands. The comfort-seeking part can speak, but it does not decide. The king decides. 11th stage. Loving what you do. If I asked you, what is more important, productivity or effectiveness, what would you say? Productivity is about getting more output for the same measure of time, while effectiveness is about doing the right things that matter. So your goal is becoming disciplined. Why? Discipline is like a Trojan horse, through which we mask our true desires. John wants to be successful, happy, and to live a fulfilled life, and he uses discipline as a tool. But although discipline is very important, choosing the right life path is equally important. A disciplined artist in engineering school or a disciplined engineer in art school will work harder than everyone else just to be average. Effort increases, results don't. Some people are stuck in roles that don't fit them, work longer hours, miss deadlines, create stress for people around them, and still fall behind. They're exhausted, dissatisfied, and confused about why discipline isn't working. You should always bet on your strengths, not your weaknesses. If money and social status were out of the picture, what would you choose to do? What would it feel like? More like play. This is why it is very important to let children play when they are young. John decides to ask the people closest to him for an honest, objective assessment of himself, what they think he would do best, and he uses that input. When John was younger, he thought that the pinnacle of life is to have enough money so that he can do nothing. However, when he came to a job he really enjoyed, he saw that he was much more happier. He gladly worked for 12 hours. People said that he was not normal and that is not healthy, but he was happier, healthier, and with more energy than those who worked fixed 8-hour shifts. But be aware, this is not a magic pill also. It will give you much satisfaction and life will be much easier, but for everything you do, there will always be segments you do not like, deadlines that create stress, and if you want to grow, a lot of discomfort. This is why this is level 11. You first need a base, the ability to do what needs to be done, whether you like it or not. But it is very important to have the consciousness to choose your life path wisely, accessing your strengths and your weaknesses, not just going semi-blindly with the current. 12th stage, working with great people. At the highest level, John understands something uncomfortable. Who you work with can matter more than the work itself. A great mentor, a great team, a great standard can pull more out of you than motivation ever will. Like a samurai trained by a master, or an athlete surrounded by champions, excellence becomes normal. Compare that to a toxic environment, constant hostility, low standards, quiet resentment. The same discipline that thrives in a great group gets slowly crushed there. This is the final stage because it's the least in your control. You are the average of the people you spend time with. History proves it. When great minds are clustered together, artists, thinkers, builders, entire eras were born. Leonardo da Vinci emerged in Renaissance Italy, surrounded by masters, patrons, and rival geniuses. Proximity compounds talent. John doesn't romanticize this. He knows not everyone can choose their environment freely, but he becomes aware. He moves toward better rooms, better standards, better people whenever possible.